And welcome for the second edition of the Duval Dive, a Jaguars podcast. Here we have a second preseason game underway there. Listen, all we're trying to do is make you keep your motor running because we were watching some stuff that came in from Detroit as the Jaguars face the Lions in preseason. And listen, I appreciate my co-host, my dude himself, Travis Holmes from Big Cat Country, trying to keep himself from just absolutely throwing things at his computer as I make bad dad jokes. Of course, I'm Kyle Nash, student of the game with the Jaguar Report, and I'll have all sorts of stuff I'll be going over from my spotlight players that I put up there as it was there too. But listen, my guy, Travis Holmes, man, what's going on, brother?
Man, I'm doing well. Jaguars victory. I don't have to wear my shirt. We are doing great.
Yes, that would be the This Team Makes Me Drink shirt that you are well known for here.
Yes,
Not
sir.
just from this podcast, but of course from the student of the game as well. Bing! Anyways, Travis, got to tell you, man, obviously, if you are a member of the Duval Devout, as I refer to Jaguars fans,
Mm.
you're happy to see 25-7, but let's not act like this is your one-of-the-mill victory. And please remember, last week I said that watching preseason's a lot like watching Whose Line Is in It Way. It's a lot of fun, but the points don't matter. This week I'm saying that the preseason is like watching an episode of Ted Lasso. Sure, you see some game action in the middle of it, but the score really doesn't matter. And at the end, it only adds gravity to the dialogue from the coach after you see that footage. Anyways, see what I did there? No, but Travis, let's go ahead and go with it too. Obviously, as I did last week from the Jaguar Report, I had my spotlight players. We'll talk about a couple of those here too, as I know you and I have a couple that allied. But
hmm
it was eventually just barely 12-0 at the end of the first half.
Yeah.
CJ Beathard coming out, it was a little difficult. He didn't have necessarily the greatest performance on the day, but the defensive front coming out, I think, looking better than a lot of fans would anticipate. They look pretty good up front, especially after allegedly missing out. You could put it in air quotes
Yeah.
on picking up Jadeveon Clowney after he visited Jacksonville and ended up signing with the Ravens. How'd you feel about the defensive front's performance today there, Travis?
I mean, I felt they've done well. They had an equally great, if not better, game than they had against the Cowboys,
Mm.
and that's awesome because that's all we wanted to see: two consistent games in a row with some great internal pressure. Still haven't seen the pure bend from the outside linebackers. Klebon Chason, Yasir Abdullah. I mean, they had a few pressures today, both of them actually, but
Right.
nevertheless where sacks are king. Sacks are king. And that's what we're here for. But nevertheless, that internal pressure is something serious because we're told by the Jaguars defensive line coach, Coach Buckner, that internal pressure is what's going to change the difference between Trevon Walker and Josh Allen getting more sacks. So, assuming that is a true statement, awesome for the starting D line. But nevertheless, they looked great as far as that pressure was concerned. The Lions weren't even able to run the ball.
Mhm.
They absolutely weren't able to pass the ball, which is not necessarily only because of the defensive line, but the overall yardage was like 399 to 131. Sorry.
Mhm.
Uh, so obviously we did well, and that's mainly because of that defensive line, that defensive front.
Yeah, anything where Fatukasi's not in the game and they're still getting inside push, I'm with you on that. I think that's a lot going on. One of the players you mentioned sacks are king. You will see some talk of Jeremiah Ledbetter in the top spotlight players that I wrote about on the Jaguar Report. And listen, when you get that kind of push from a guy to disrupt the run and he gets a sack, granted, I kind of feel like there was a little bit of slippery fingers early on. Like there was a lot of guys who could have tried to tackle somebody, but that's a whole other question.
I mean,
Um,
Klebon Chason came in unblocked on the first rush,
mm,
missed him. Also had a chance for a sack on the third down play and didn't get it. Additionally, Yasir Abdullah also had a chance for a sack. It was the same thing, and that's why I say sacks are king. When you get to those top flight quarterbacks, pressures are great, but pressures don't mean they won't throw for a touchdown. So it's all about getting that quarterback down. The Jaguars have to find a better way of converting those pressures into sacks.
Indeed. So listen, all we're trying to tell you is if you're wondering why a couple defensive rushers are running a few extra laps in upcoming practices, we have explained to you precisely why. By the way, side note here, Travis, I absolutely hated number 50 on a quarterback. What'd you think of Teddy Bridgewater coming out with that? I'm sorry. That just bothered me.
Brother, if he would have come out and lit the thing, like if Trevor Lawrence wants to come out wearing the number 50, awesome. But Teddy, bro, you played like somebody who wore the number 50. Like you played like somebody wearing the number 50 playing at quarterback today. Like that was not great at all, man. That was
Not
a very
great,
bad
huh?
performance. Well, no, I said it. I said it after the game. I said it on my Facebook and I said it on my social media. I even said it in my post game video originally, like
By the way,
immediately.
that would be
Teddy,
Trav Likes Bacon if you're wondering where that Twitter handle
yes,
is.
Trav likes bacon on Twitter or X as we'll call it now. Stupid name.
No, call it X all
No, Teddy
DMX
Bridgewater is going to Teddy Bridgewater is going to make the task for the defensive coaches for the Jaguars nearly impossible because this game tape from the vantage point of someone who is trying to evaluate the secondary and trying to evaluate the linebackers and their coverage responsibilities is going to be so impossible to grade. Like you're going to start having to grade it like PFF. Like, hey, was he kind of open? Was he really open? Because Teddy was missing a lot of guys who were like blatantly NFL open. And he did it on at least 4 to 5 occasions per my count. And because of that, it's like technically speaking, this yardage should have been a lot worse. The conversion opportunity should have been a lot worse or a lot better, I guess I should say, from the Lions' perspective. And Teddy just missed some guys. Like it felt like his play fell off a cliff in that way. So it may come down to these guys only having that one additional opportunity next week as far as those fringe roster guys in the secondary who play special teams, because that may be what it comes down to. Because, again, these guys didn't get the chance to really make plays on the ball downfield because Teddy wasn't putting the ball up, even though these guys were sometimes open, honestly.
See, and that's the thing. And I'm getting a lot of response on social media about Greg Jr. Like I had him last week in the players to watch, as somebody who was popping against the Cowboys. I didn't put him this week. And I get why you would think so. He got an interception, made some plays. But when you're going against mediocre quarterback play, I wasn't paying that much attention to you. There were other guys I was more interested in seeing. I feel like it's kind of like he did the reverse of what Ledbetter did. Ledbetter came in. I mean, he got some moments, but there were better defensive players. And this week, I put in Ledbetter. I thought he had more of an impact on why the Lions went scoreless in the first half than Junior did. And listen, I'm not here to say Junior did a bad job, but as somebody who's going to throw out the X, go and give it to you Twitter name thing that you're going to do. See, I promised you a DMX trash talk. You're out here telling me this would eventuate to this, but in your own timeline, you're like, yeah, but Bridgewater, I wasn't ready for Teddy either. I don't think he did all that great today. I'm with you. But that's why I didn't have him in there.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, like I knew after the 4th to 5th series of the game, Jeremiah Ledbetter was going to be the defensive player of the game. It was just a question of whether or not he was going to be the player of the game.
That's right.
But he was absolutely already going to be in that like conversation. By the middle of the 4th series of the game, I already had him with 4 run stops. He had a sack and he had a fumble recovery on the 3rd drive. That in and of itself, the whole game, that'll do it.
He had a fumble forced. I don't think he had
forced.
That was right.
Sorry. Yes. But I'm like, that's by the middle of the 4th drive of the game. That pretty much, for most people, for the whole game, that might do it. So, yeah, I mean, he absolutely deserved it. Now, obviously, Junior had the interception on the overthrow. But again, it was an overthrow, and he didn't have much more opportunity to do much else outside of that because, again, Teddy. And you don't want to like ding him for that, obviously. But if we're talking about competitions for the secondary, maybe even competitions for that nickel role, then you want to have like some real conversation about what they're doing on special teams. And to be real, I'm not looking at close punt return coverage and kickoff and things of that nature. So that's kind of why it is what it is.
Well, and I think we touched on this a little bit last week, and not to throw my dude John Shipley, who was giving me the opportunity at Jaguar. Port shouts to you, my friend. Bing! But he was saying something about, Junior getting a roster spot for sure based on this. I think you and I had ordained him further ahead of that based on last week's performance. But I mean, I don't feel like this should have changed your mind. But if the glory of having another turnover, I should say,
Yeah.
connected to you on your belt on outside of special teams play. That should certainly make things happen. But Travis, I wanted to run this past you too because we've been critical of quarterbacks wearing silver and blue. CJ Beathard did not have a great day. And I know that somebody is going to want to pick out a receiver that actually scored a touchdown. I did not put the scorer of a touchdown. I did not put Washington in my list of players who did well. Instead, I went a different direction. Last week, I threw shouts at Jacob Harris. This week, I have Tim Jones, the undrafted man, second year out of Southern Miss. Your job is to make a quarterback like CJ Beathard, who's struggling a good, and he achieved that here, did he not?
He did, but I want to give a man some credit. Like I did not, on my original review of that throw, I didn't think he truly underthrew it. He could have done a better job throwing it, probably a yard or two down the field, but I thought it was honestly a solid throw. If you're comparing that to his later throw to Jacob Harris, that should have been a touchdown on third down in that red zone. That was an underthrow.
Sir,
that was a legitimate underthrow.
CJ, you kept Jacob Harris from being in this beast back to back on the Jaguar report. I hope you're happy.
Right. I felt some kind of way about that throw, and I knew no one would want to talk about it. But no, that was a great catch, and I thought it was at a minimum a solid throw. So but no, it was a great catch, solid throw, good job. Keep it moving. I'm down with that. But again, that later throw, Jacob Harris should have either been a touchdown or an opportunity for him to have one. And I don't think that no one wanted to talk about it because everyone was raving about this great throw, and that stinks for Jacob's sake.
Well, yeah, the great catch here. Well, and I'll say this, buddy. Like you say, it's a solid throw. I'll put it this way: maybe CJ doesn't owe Tim an entire six-pack, but at least half of one, because this is a hell of an effort, man. I don't want to be stealing for somebody who's trying to make a team with the competition being as stiff as it is at the receiver spot. That's a play you got to make, right, Travis?
Oh, absolutely. And that competition is going to be insane because I honestly don't know who's going to be that that seventh, if they keep seventh, or at minimum that sixth guy in that wide receiver room. And this is the fun part, because as far as quarterback is concerned, everyone wants there to be a competition. To be frank, I'm one of those people. I want there to be a competition between, CJ Beathard and Nathan Rourke. I think there deserves to be a competition. However, I'm not in practice every day, right? I know that I personally feel that Nathan Rourke has earned that right and deserves to be. But however, maybe Nathan Rourke is a better gamer like, Blake Bortles and Minshew, and not necessarily someone who's keeping on schedule, making the easy completions, doing those things as far as the playbook is concerned. And maybe Beathard is just that guy who's going to keep you on schedule and make the easy stuff look easy. And that may deserve some back and forth. I don't know where Doug's head is on that, but Doug came out and kind of squashed that after the game, unfortunately.
You're referring to Nathan Rourke being promoted over CJ Beathard. Yeah, I saw that too, and I like the point you're making. He might be great off script, but you can't miss the layups in the NFL, and I think that's something we're seeing more and more, not just obviously in Jaguar camp. I feel like that's a point that's being made more than more nationally about quarterbacks, whether we're talking about Jacksonville, San Francisco, or anywhere else, Tennessee, anywhere else there's a quarterback controversy. That's why it's a good point.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it comes down to. And I'm not, but either someone's going to be traded in that wide receiver room, or we're going to lose one or two guys. Like I said last week, like to that Alan Lazard situation, we're going to lose someone who is going to be on the starting roster, contributing significant snaps, if not even starting for another NFL team, between a Seth Williams, between a Jacob Harris, between a Tim Jones, whoever it may be, Elijah Cooks, you name it. We have like 4, maybe even 5 guys who are, potential options for other teams who are unlikely to sneak onto the practice squad. That is crazy.
You keep bringing up Alan Lazard, who was now a Jet. I think my favorite example was a guy who was playing against the Jets and lit them up in a preseason game at one point. Victor Cruz for the Giants, I think, is the best example of a guy to come out of nowhere in the preseason. Anyways, and I just like salsa dancing.
I like to break it home for my Jags fans, because we know about Allen because we were all here not wanting Allen to be cut. So I think it hits a little bit closer to home. That's all.
No, I hear that, but it's different when you get I'll put it this way. he wasn't playing under a future Hall of Famer like Aaron Charles Rodgers at the time too. Like, can we put that where that is as well? Can we
That's
give a
fair.
little credit where due? And I'm not.
That's fair.
I mean, listen. Of the crimes held against Jaguar football, such as they are in the currents of things, I think that's a lesser crime than the Miles Jack situation in the playoffs. Oh, your face changed. You agree with me? Okay. Why you got to do that?
You can't bring up no Miles Jack wasn't down situation and think I'm not going to have an immediate change of my everything. No, we got problems.
It's almost as if I planned it that way. Anyways, listen, we talked about the offense. Oh, go ahead.
Please tell me we're going to talk about this offensive line because it's not bad, but I'm nervous.
You should be. Yeah, there's a lot of injury on it. I was going to get to that in a minute. I did want to get to one more positive for the Jaguars offensively before we do that. And this, listen, man, this is not to discredit what you're talking about at all. Like, we will talk kind of, I'll use the word piling up. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
But for me, I feel like we got to give another dude some shouts. And I think you and I were both. This is a situation for all the, how you say, Twitter sparring that we do. I feel like this is one we were pretty darn lockstep on. And I'm going to bring it in here too. And this particular dude, like what he did on the ground to score the 2 touchdowns is just Ernest finished 6 for 36. Obviously, we talk about the receiver room, this running back up front on offense. You were bringing it up, Ian. Yeah, a lot of defensive issues. Of course, I got to throw a little shout to my guy, Sam Jack, who is UDFA from UCF as well. I saw him be a heavy part of that second one they converted early in the third quarter. But yeah, I think the offensive line, they didn't necessarily have a great day. I feel like the left tackle spot was a struggle a little bit. But the injuries are piling up, Travis.
Well, it's not just it's like I was concerned before the injuries. Like, it's the injuries piling up is a concern. And it was a concern before the game. We kind of talked about that already offline. But in addition, the quality of the play wasn't where we wanted it to be, especially when you're talking about the fact that we were playing against backups and you have, you have Cam Robinson who's struggling against backups at your left tackle role, like you just mentioned. You have Walker Little, who's starting at your left guard role for pretty much the first half of the game. And I actually thought he looked solid. And I want to be clear about saying that he looked solid in the pass game and he looked dominant in the run game at left guard. And that had my eyes a little bit open. Like, maybe that's an option. That's a positive take from the O-line. However, you lost Cooper Hodges to this knee injury, which Doug Marrone after practice stated was a patella injury. Yeah. I dislocated my patella, which is a minor patella injury, and that's a 6-month return to get your full strength back. Like, I know from personal experience, if it's a patella injury, that's not going to be good. That's not like a 1 or 2 week situation. That's probably going to be in and of itself a problem. And I'm just hoping the best news out of that is hopefully that they'll put him on PUP or something along those lines, because I think the Tugboat truly had a lock on that 53-man roster before this injury. And now I question whether or not that's going to happen. So whether it's PUP or whether it's IR, we'll see what the doctors say after they run their testing and such. But they confirmed it's a patella injury for him. And Chandler Brewer had his shoulder injury, which Doug stated was a small, like a more minor injury. So we'll see how that looks over the next, week to 2 weeks. Maybe he may be solid by the start of the season. But to your point, you said Sam Jackson. My mind immediately went to him as soon as I saw these injuries. Like, hey, man, that might give him an opportunity to have a locked roster spot. Maybe not guaranteed, but because it still depends on if they sign anyone or anything like that. But that's on the table.
Yeah, and listen, he's been doing a great job. And talking to him, the conversation I had with him, which you can find on the podcast Night Shift with the Black and Gold Banneret. Bing! He said that he was basically scraping to find anything he could knowledge-wise. It was the mental game that was the tough part. And even talking to some of his former teammates, like the painting behind me here is an Aaron Evans originally. He says his biggest problem I shouldn't say his biggest problem. The biggest thing he's got for him is Sam Jack is a big dude who's smart. I had been critical of his footwork in the past at his career at UCF. And hey, listen, if he's bringing it along and can make a difference for this Jaguars squad, he could be part of why fans are saying at the end of the season, should they win the AFC South, as everyone seems to be predicting, it was always the Jags is the thing. I think more kind of an emperor kind of thing rather than a plucky, comeback like last year, Anyways.
Well, I'm questionable. I question, like, the thing that keeps me up at night, and I'm guaranteeing the thing that probably is going to keep Doug Peterson up at night is
makes you buy your beer so you drink for this team.
Well, Doug, if you don't know history or you don't remember what happened in Philadelphia, Doug got fired after that COVID 2020 season when his offensive line had some significant serious injuries. They had like 13 to 14 different starting combinations to their O-line in that season. And that's what caused them, essentially, that's the main thing that caused them to have a rough season, is they just couldn't they couldn't run the ball, they couldn't protect the quarterback, they couldn't do much if your O-line is basically a sleeve. It's a seat. That's a problem. You can't, this has to be something that's front of mind for Doug, and I'm sure of it. Like, it feels like history repeating itself. Like, he has to have a plan of action, whether that's signing someone, whether that's sitting these guys to make sure he gets his line back to a full strength. Because right now, as it currently stands, something that seemed to be a strength walking into the season, us thinking we were going to be cutting a great offensive lineman by the end of the season, now feels like, what are we going to do? Like, we're getting to that point because these guys are injured. You have the Cam Robinson suspension in the first 4 games. You have Anton, who's already banged up and maybe banged up for the whole season with his pain tolerance issue with his shoulder.
Yeah.
You have an AFib issue with Tyler Shatley. You got Ben Barch, who's still trying to make his way back from PUP. And then you lose Cooper Hodges for, at minimum, it's going to be an he's going to be out sometime. If it's a patella injury, as they stated, he's likely going to be out sometime. We're waiting for more information, but
week 1 doesn't sound like an option. That's the bottom line, folks, right?
Right. You got Chandler Brewer, who has his injury. Goodness gracious. Like, this is a lot. That's a lot for a position where you're normally only going to keep 10 to at most 11 guys. Well, and you're talking about I just named 6 guys with injuries?
Yeah.
Goodness.
Well, and there's the good news, though, and I'm not saying that this cures it all, but what's helpful, you mentioned Dearness Johnson looking good in pass blocking. Another reason why I labeled Tank Bigsby in my Jaguars Report article this week, which please go check that out, is because he had some moments pass blocking as well. I think he's going to do a fine job. Where that may not necessarily be Etienne's strength. Travis Etienne does a lot of cool stuff. I think he's going to be a valuable part of this offense. He's certainly RB1. I don't think anybody's arguing with that. But Tank coming in, making me look absolutely stupid at me questioning this draft pick, by the way. I'm going to have to live with that for the rest of the dang season. If he keeps up like this anyway. Add pass blocking to the list, man. He's doing a great job with what I've seen so far from that. So, Travis, anything else before we wrap up for this week?
Nah, man. And for the most part, that's everything that I have for today until I have an opportunity to watch that all 22. So next time we're on, maybe we'll dig into that a little bit more and talk about any new articles that we have up. But that absolutely for your pregame and practice updates, for your news updates, absolutely please visit bigcatcountry.com. I'll have our news updates posted there pretty much every day, and also give Mr. Nash a visit at the Jaguar Report over at SI.
Hey, my man. And listen, I'll give you this much credit too, Travis. Make sure you follow Trav Likes Bacon on Twitter, because as those observations pop out of that all 22 film viewing, he will have more of that analysis for you as well. Hey, good stuff. Glad to bring in episode number 2 with you. We'll be back with you next week after the preseason game that will actually be within the limits of the Duval. The Duval Devout hopefully will show up as big as one can for a preseason game. Of course, they'll have another Florida team in the hizzy there with the Miami Dolphins coming in the house. That'll be fascinating. I have a lot that I really want to see there too. Call me
like starters.
Well, for one, why are they still going with the Myles Gaskin experience? But that's Dolphins wire Kyle talking. I'll leave that at that. But an honor, joy, and privilege Travis told you where he could be found at thebigcatcountry.com. And of course, Trav like spanking on Twitter, on the gram, on Threads. Are you hip enough to be on Spill?
I am not yet. I'm
sorry. Oh,
see,
I got more on you than see. That's right. I got talent. I'm on Spill as the SOTG. And of course, I'm on Threads, Instagram, and Twitter as the same, the SOTG. Check out my Facebook page as the student of the game. My writings, of course, on Jaguar Report covering the Jacksonville Jaguars with SI. And I have my AFC South preview coming out on or around August 30th, probably the next day, because the AFC South episode of the Student of the Game podcast will be on August 30th at 8:40 Eastern. This coming week, we'll be doing the AFC North, so check that out when you see that. I think that's everybody. Check out A7B in Sports as well, as we're going there too. And hey, Travis, check this out. If you like college football, not only do I cover stuff with the Black and Gold Banneret, but I will be in the building for FSU LSU for the Citrus Bowl kickoff as we get things going. So for me, it'll be Thursday, August 31st, covering UCF, their first action. And then that Sunday, yes, College Sunday is a thing when the NFL isn't going. I'll be at the Citrus Bowl kickoff, man. So I'm doing things. I'm busy.
Dude, that's dope, man. That's awesome.
And of course, my God, running the thing for Sotoba Media, one of our outlets that's streaming us. Thank you, Drew, for stepping in there as well. But with that in mind, for Travis Holmes of Big Cat Country, I am Kyle Nash of the Jaguar Report. Until next time, my friends, class dismissed.